You all for coming. If you haven't signed up and you'd like to make comments, address the planning board, we have a list over here. If you'd see Crystal, she'll be glad to help you get signed up.
This is the Harvard line. That's the location, and this one is for the tree board for the alternate landscape.
This time I'd like to call the roll. Michelle Reese.
Here.
John Kilman. Here. Samantha Towns. Dennis Gay. Here. Jordan Oblett.
Here.
Sydney Sandy.
Right.
Do we have an approval for the meetings, the meeting minutes for last time?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a second? Have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. And we go to the discussion items. Would that be Katie?
Sir, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the application before you is a conditional rezoning request for Harper's Run. It is approximately 18 acres in size. The property is currently zoned single-family, low-density residential within the Old Monroe Village overlay. The proposed zoning is multifamily residential, conditional zoning also within the Old Monroe Village overlay district, and the applicant is MI Homes. The intent is to construct 116 townhomes. Here's a copy of the latest concept plan to orient you a bit. Here's Chestnut Lane, and this close over here beyond yonder, that's Old Monroe Road. So again, Chestnut Lane. The new Presley Animal Hospital is going in, and if you've been on Chestnut Lane, you can see that, which is approximately in this area. So you can see, of course, 116 townhomes are proposing a tot lot here, and you can see how where they're proposing to lay out trees, and then perimeter buffer is proposed all the way around the project site. Here's an example of the architectural rendering. You can see the front elevation. You can see the two end units, which is they're showing to be the Catalba style, would actually have the door access from the side there. So if you're going, where's the door? It's actually off to the side. But you can see this is an example or representation of what you could expect with this project. Here's a photo example of a real life project. Here's some photos from the existing site. These are a couple of months old now because they reflect the construction going on for the Presley Animal Hospital, but this is just one snapshot looking toward the site. It's certainly covers a wider area than that, but this is, again, the existing site, and then this is the Presley Animal Hospital. And this is looking toward Old Monroe Road, and this is looking toward Austin Village and the Harris Teeter Shopping Center. Here's a vicinity map to help orient you a bit better. Again, here's Chestnut Lane. The property is outlined in red here, and here's Old Monroe Road. Williams Rescue Road is over here. Here's a zoning map. Anything in yellow, this light shade of yellow is single-family, low-density residential, as is the subject property. You can see the request would take it to brown, which isn't shown on here, but that's the color represented for multifamily residential. So this type of residential use would largely be compatible since there are, again, existing residential uses with the exception of the animal hospital across the road. Looking at the comprehensive plan for the future land use map, the future land use map calls for this area to be mixed use in the future. We're only seeing one half of the mixed use element here, but it would be largely in keeping with that area. with that requirement at least. And obviously, as things continue to develop out in the future, obviously we're hoping to see more non-residential uses, because since this is in a village, we hope to see uses that are gonna be beneficial for the neighborhood. Certainly, the animal hospital is one thing that's beneficial because residents have pets, and that's something that's gonna come in handy. I've included in your PowerPoint presentation, which you also received in the staff report, photos of the Old Monroe widening. Again, this doesn't directly impact this project because this is Old Monroe, but it does just give you a sense of the future and what to expect with the growth and the change in this area. So this is looking at Bryson Road. So that starts here and goes down approximately this is where the future Chestnut Parkway expansion is shown. So this shows a little bit beyond that. And then the next slide here shows Chestnut Lane, again, where the project is a bit further down here and then back in here. And then this takes you up to Kiwi Circle. Community meetings, the 2 required meetings were held on January 16th. There were approximately 13 people in attendance. Of course, everyone was there to learn more about the project, and some were concerned with traffic congestion on Old Monroe Road as well as Chestnut Lane. Some were concerned with dust and dirt from the site, and also the impact on schools. You should have received also a copy of the minutes and the notes from the meeting in your packet. For the recommendation, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We can say that it does promote the goals of quality of life and land use and housing. And staff does recommend approval, but with the conditions that we confirm that the sheriff's office is satisfied with the applicant's response to their comments. So the sheriff's office took a look at it, provided some comments, we sent those comments on to the applicant. I'm just waiting for confirmation from the sheriff to confirm that that's okay. I expect that it's going to be fine because his comments are not critical in nature, at least not the ones that he provided. Just wanting to make sure we have ample parking and that the streets are going to be wide enough, and they are. But like I said, just want to be able to cross that off. And then also just want to make sure we provide a second entrance. The ordinance requires that developments that have 50 lots or more provide a second entrance. And so again, this one has 116 units. So at this time, I'm going to read the required consistency findings into the record. The planning board is required to make 2 consistency findings, one for consistency with the town adopted plans and another regarding the benefit of the public. Staff is of the opinion that the following findings can be made. The proposed UDO amendment is consistent with the following goals of the comprehensive plan. Quality of life, goal number 1, the proposed request will give the opportunity to establish a unique identity to this area. The higher density of townhomes would be a reasonable transition closer to the center of Old Monroe Village with commercial and retail uses. Land use and housing, goal number 1, the proposed project will provide a housing option that is not abundantly available in this area, which gives the community more residential options from which to choose. This rezoning request is reasonable and is in the public interest because it promotes the goals of the Indian Trail Comprehensive Plan in the areas of quality of life as well as land use and housing. Want to point out to you that, first of all, that's all that I have for your staff report, but do want to let you know that the applicant is here, and if you'd like them to make a presentation, they are able to, or certainly if you have any questions of them as well when the time comes, they're available.
Any questions from our board?
I have one. Katie, can you talk about the 1 entrance versus 2? Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Yes, sir. So there's a section in our ordinance that states that developments that have 50 units or more provide a second entrance, and this one does. This concept plan that we're showing here does provide 2 entrances, and that is certainly for a safety point of view and largely safety and convenience. You know, if anything happens to occur that blocks one of these entrances, folks have another way to get out. We are still waiting on final comment and approval from our engineer and also the Department of Transportation, I think they need to flesh out this where the actual entrances are. I believe they need to be a bit more comfortable with how close they are, so you may see that change and they may be a bit further apart. But I expect that to be fleshed out. The applicant could speak to that as well if you have any questions. Does that help?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
sure.
We just had someone come in. If you want to make a comment, sir, you can sign up over here with the sign-in sheet. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I do. This is the place that's next to is this place located next to the new, the one that you just finished building?
The which one?
This location, is it next to the one that they just finished building? Like, the townhouse that they just finished building, is this the connection? No?
ma'am.
Oh, okay.
That is a
Okay.
bit further down.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
Yes,
All
ma'am. You're right, it's in the general vicinity, but if
Okay.
you come out here on Old Monroe and turn on Bryson Village.
Okay, all right.
I think you're thinking of the ones in Stallings.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yes, I
On the right.
I
Yes, 'cause
wasn't,
you
I
just
wasn't
looked
sure.
at 15 townhomes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Now, both of the entrances or the exits, will they all come on Old Monroe? Or there's other ways they can get in and out?
No, both of them are only going to be on Chestnut Lane.
Chestnut, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
gotcha, okay.
Cars entering onto Chestnut Lane from Old Monroe, that is a consistent bottleneck. Will DOT be putting in some sort of directional light or something because traffic gets backed up all the way to Charlotte?
Not at-
With people trying to, make the turn onto Chestnut.
Yes, ma'am. Not at this point. My understanding is they'll see how the impact comes with the widening of Old Monroe. And then, of course, they'll also take into consideration the proximity to the existing traffic light down on Old Monroe at the intersection of Indian Trail Road. So you're not seeing that yet as a result of this, but certainly once that changes.
It's occurring, it's happening without, the
Yep.
development.
Let me show you the super street here.
Now, when did they back the Super Street back to now? Because I know they delayed it a year.
It's still 2021? Possibly 2022.
2022.
You can also see here with the widening, again, here's Chestnut Lane, so when folks come out of Chestnut, they'll be turning right here, and they can loop around it as they need to.
And this may be a question for the applicant more so than you guys, but when is the targeted start date and finish date for construction for full build-out? So I guess the folks on the board get a better idea of kind of when these traffic impacts will be at their worst in conjunction with when this widening is set to occur.
Sure.
Yeah, if you'll go to the podium. Thank you.
I'm Willie Morris, by the way, with MI Homes. Development will likely start beginning of next year, with home construction starting the following year. So 2021 would be your first homes, build out over 3 to 4 years. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, are we gonna have public comments before we take a vote on this?
Well,
Because,
what we'll do is we'll have a presentation from the developer first, and then we'll
Okay.
have,
Yeah.
ask some questions, and
'Cause
we'll
I-
have public comment.
I read in the notes what the issues were when they came to the meetings previously, and I just want to know if those were addressed, and it says that, but were they addressed to the satisfaction of the residents, is what I'd like to hear, so.
We'd like a presentation now on the development from the developer.
Well, again, my name is Willie Morris. I'm land acquisition manager with MI Homes. We are a super regional builder. I describe ourselves. We're national, but kind of on a regional scale. We operate in the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, Florida, and Texas. Around here in Charlotte, we've got 12 active communities currently that we're selling homes out of, and 5 under development. So we'll have 17 by the end of the year. As you can look at the map, we kind of cover the whole scope of Charlotte, Union County, York, Gaston, Mecklenburg, Cabarrus, all the way up into Iredell. So couple of notes about how we ended up talking to the landowner here, Scott, and came to this site. Affordability is a hot button issue, I think, for everybody around Charlotte. We're seeing a lot of problems being able to deliver supply in a price point that folks can afford these days, especially the young millennials that are finally starting to buy homes. One of the ways to bridge that gap is to build townhomes. A little bit smaller product, smaller sites, more dense, allows us to control our costs a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, and deliver product that they can afford. So we're targeting pricing here at Harper's Run between $225,000 and call it $280,000. Units would be about 1,400 to 1,900 square feet. A mixture of 1 car on the interior unit and 2 car garages on the end units. The end units are a little bit larger. End units actually have a 4-bedroom option, so we can also cater to young families in that scenario. We feel like some of the road improvements that are coming, especially the Old Monroe Super Street, is a real game changer for this area. I know traffic is a major issue. We're not naive to that. But we also have to realize that, Indian Trail is a suburb of Charlotte, which is growing rapidly as fast as any city in the nation. In addition, I think personally the Weddington Road, the new Weddington 485 interchange is going to help, as that's going to give another access point for people in Southwest Indian Trail to, make it up into Charlotte. Back to the millennials, we feel like we can offer a price point here that's pretty compelling for a young buyer compared to the rental market right now. We've seen, obviously, you all have seen a ton of apartments being built in Charlotte, and rents just keep going higher and higher, which is why the apartment developers still continue to build them. One thing that we've also heard that we want to make clear is that we don't want renters in our community. So we have a policy where we limit the number of investor buyers, and the way we do that is no one entity can buy more than 2 homes, and so that we want owner occupied units. So excuse me, that's one way we'll address that. Just real quickly, the rest of my presentation kind of mirrors Katie, so it's nothing new. There's our location, site plan with the 2 entrances. We've kind of gone back and forth. The entrance to the east is going to be a full access right now, depending on pending DOT's comments. The one to the west is going to be a right in, right out with a median. This is our end unit, the Catawba that I was talking about, 2-car garage. You can see around the side entrance kind of comes into the foyer family room. And then you have options for either 2 master bedrooms or actually 2 extra bedrooms. So we hopefully can cater to the young family there. Here's some entrance concepts that we've used in other communities. What we would do here at Harper's would be similar. We take a lot of pride in our communities and making them look well, especially at the entrance. There are front doors. There are kind of our retail stores. So expect that to look very nice. And again, my name's Willie Morris. Chris Todd is our lead engineer on the project, working with Katie Bradley, and then Jeremiah Murphy works with me at MI. We're here to answer any questions, technical or otherwise, that anybody has.
Questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions. Is it going to be a homeowner association?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, great,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
The street widths, Again, I read over it and I saw where the sheriff said they couldn't read it, and then, of course, I pulled it up electronically, and unfortunately, it's not like AutoCAD, so you can't zoom in on it, so I couldn't tell what the street widths were, so,
Yeah. They're compliant. Chris? 60, you wanna? Let's see.
We are using the Indian Trail typical section for a local residential street. It is, the lanes are 12 feet wide apiece with 2-foot valley curb.
okay. I was just concerned because on-street parking, and that's my next question, is on-street parking gonna be allowed in this development? Because, I mean,
Yes.
we got communities in the Indian Trail right now that you can't even get down because of the narrow streets and the on-street parking, and I'm concerned about the fire trucks being able to access some of these units. So,
Right, so we have 12-foot lanes along with the on-street parking is 7 feet wide from edge of pavement to basically face of curb where it bumps out for the parallel parking. We've got at least 35 spaces on this plan for on-street parking. And so each driveway too, these units are not pulled up to the street. The driveways are about 20 feet long, so the end units, which are 2-car garages, they could actually park 2 in the garage if they used them for parking, 2 in the driveway, and then you've, the interior units are 1 in the garage, 1 in the driveway, and then there's 35 additional spaces just spread throughout the community.
well, I saw the sheriff's comments where he was asking for 24 feet to be sure that, and we've got developments that the second car covers the sidewalk, and then they're not usable, so.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 25 feet from, the right-of-way is placed at the back of the sidewalk. So we have 25 feet from the back of the sidewalk / right-of-way to the front of the product. So you could easily put 2 cars there
Okay,
stacked. So that's,
Without.
yeah,
okay.
Right. right.
And the last question is are there any parks or walking trails or anything included? Like I say, some of this I couldn't read it, even the electronic file.
Sure, there's an open space provided in the central area of the development. It's, what all is gonna be in there, it's undefined at the time. Katie described it as a tot lot. I mean, there could be various types of amenities over there, just as far as benches, sidewalks, possibly playground equipment. We haven't gotten to that level of detail, but, it's a reasonable size area.
Okay. Are any funds set aside for this park area, or the homeowners will have to pay for this?
I suspect it'll be built by the builder, but then it'll be maintained by the HOA.
Ultimately, the HOA
Right.
cost.
I mean, I just want to be sure the initial cost
Oh, yeah.
wasn't going to be bared by the property owner. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You mentioned right turn in, right turn out, and you really hadn't cleared all this with DOT yet? Is that what I
Yeah,
understood?
we're showing 2 entrances. We have been in communication with Lee Ainsworth to try to sort this out. Right now, the entrance that we're showing on, I'll just call it the east side of the property, is lined up with the vet office. Their plans just have basically a standard driveway tying into the existing edge of pavement out there. We're doing, they didn't do any road improvements with their development. So, but we have our driveway lined up. Can you flip to let's do this. Easier to see. Yeah, that one. So the one on the right, that's lined up. The center lines are lined up. We've got it flared out a little bit so that we could put a median in there. And that's going to be full access, right in, right out for both the vet and this development. The entrance on the left is a right in, right out. So there'll be a small median out in the road just to keep people from cheating, basically, and trying to cut left. So there's, with NCDOT, there's two issues. There's the proximity of the two entrances next to each other. And then there's also sight distance, vertical sight distance, as you're coming out of the entrance on the right, looking down Chestnut, there's kind of a ridge there. So we're talking to them right now, and like I said, we haven't received feedback from them yet.
Do you know what the traffic count is on that road right now?
I don't have a traffic study, though. Let's see. This might take me just a minute. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Taking me a minute.
We've had some more people come in. Anybody else want an opportunity to sign up for comments while we're waiting?
Okay. So you're looking at, so you want the traffic count on
Chestnut Lane?
I can give you Chestnut and Old Monroe.
Yeah, both
Okay.
of those, please.
So we have in the morning. We've got say about 1,200 cars.
On Chestnut?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Going
double-
toward Old Monroe.
So you basically double that for coming and going?
And that's during
2,400.
peak hours.
Okay.
So 7 to 9.
Okay.
So, and then when we do traffic studies, we take, there's standard, for townhome developments, there's a certain number, you just multiply by the number of bedrooms, units, and that gives you how many. So, for instance, this is expected to generate, in the morning, 52 trips.
The issue you're going to run into is when people try to get out on Monroe Road. And I'm wondering if DOT is going to require right in, right out on both roads or exits from your property. And that would end up taking them up to Potter's Road and routing them that way over to Monroe Road.
So these entrances have moved around quite a bit. With making the right one right in, right out, to truly make it that, you'd have to deploy the same measures that you have on the other one with kind of a pork chop median and then something out actually in the road, which would then keep people from turning left into the vet. It would, basically, if you make the one to right for us, it makes it right in, right out for him too, in a way. And like I said, we're having trouble getting up with Lee Ainsworth, but as soon as we do,
Tough
we'll.
to get in touch with.
Yeah.
I'll deal with it.
We're trying to sort that all out right now.
Yeah, I guess my concern is it's going to take people forever to get out of Chestnut Lane on the Monroe Road, particularly taking a left. And so it doesn't appear DOT is going to be putting any kind of turn lanes there or stoplight or anything. So that's going to be, right at that intersection, it's going to be a major mess.
Yeah, I mean, just from other projects around the region, I mean, they know they have Old Monroe coming. So
They
they're,
don't want to improve that
Yeah.
intersection and then give it
Yeah.
up in a year. from now.
What we have the chicken and egg problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we're putting in, the sidewalk is going in, we're dedicating a lot of right-of-way here, more than I'd say the typical project. The sidewalk is going in at what should be the ultimate location, but we're also providing curb and gutter along our frontage. But even though we're putting in a turn lane, that's not ultimately where that'll be, because Chestnut's gonna be widened quite a bit. It'll be pushed out. So, our improvements that we're doing will remain there until, DOT does more, obviously with Chestnut, but.
Any other questions before we go to public comments?
Will you have extra parking, holidays like Thanksgiving, when people have more than 2 cars?
Well, we're providing, with the driveways being 25 feet long, so how many bedrooms are the interior units? Are they
Two and sometimes 3.
2 to 3? So, the interior units that have 2 to 3 bedrooms, if people actually use their garage to park in, they could park 3 cars in what would be a 2-bedroom, potentially 3-bedroom home. And then there's spillover of 35 additional spaces just throughout the community. The in units, with the driveways being 25 feet long, you could technically park 6 cars on the in units if the garages were actually used to park in. So the in unit, people who live in the in units really shouldn't need a lot of parallel parking unless, they're just having a Super Bowl party or something like that going on, but there's definitely, we tried to drop in as much parallel parking as we could. We took advantage of every spot we had.
Ms. Reeves?
Thank you.
You have a question?
Well, everybody's asked all my good questions so far, so next time I need to talk quicker. As a previous tenant of a townhome, I'm just curious, are there any sprinklers in the plans? Because you have five families living in one block. Are
let you
sprinklers
answer that.
something that is included in your specs, or is that?
No, that would be only if the fire code requires it. But,
Okay, so it obviously doesn't if they're not.
Exactly.
Okay, and then I just wanted to clarify with staff that judging from the report, it looks like this is just a simple zoning change. It's still going to be in line with our long-term plan. Am I correct with that?
Well, again, if you look at the future land use map,
Yeah.
it calls for it to be mixed use, so it's not, you have to be a bit creative as opposed to seeing medium density residential or high density residential. And like I say, if in the future we continue to get some more non-residential uses like we have with the animal hospital, then that can help to achieve that in that
Okay.
area. But for this
So-
purpose, before us right now is the higher density residential.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
that's all I have.
Any more questions?
I just have one more question pertaining to parking. Would you consider because I was thinking about like parties, you can't control how many families going to host things, and if you are open this up to millennials, they're going to have parties. So I'm just, my thing is, will you consider having like designated parking spaces? Like I know some subdivisions have that, not off the road, but like a spot where people can park cars. Because I
Like-
know Holly Park has it. They have the townhouses, and then they also have like in between, like I guess a bigger branch or like a bigger section of units. They have like you could fit like 5 or 6 cars. In there, right, and there's like a spot.
Designated with
Right.
a unit, like.
These are like extra parking, like not on the street, but they're
Overflow.
also, they're like off the street parking, where it's like in between, like, how it's, well, since you guys are
Oh, it's
doing
like a small
town.
parking lot?
Yes, but like a
Okay.
small parking lot, but it's like in between the next set of 4 units. So that's just food for thought, that.
Is this development going to have amenities like a clubhouse and a pool?
No, not a clubhouse and a pool. We're gonna have the little park area that we'll program, that's to be determined, but probably a tot lot, park, benches, maybe a little gazebo area,
Okay.
but not a pool and clubhouse.
As a resident that lives in a neighborhood that everybody's mentioned, my skinny roads, the no parking, I see why everybody up here has mentioned that, because it was written on my list too. It's an important thing when you live in a community, because you're friends with these people, but when they start, crowding your space every weekend, it becomes an issue. So I would just encourage you all to, talk through that further. And Captain Coble will be the first to tell you that parking is, in the town of Indian Trail, even in communities like these where we all love each other, but, not everybody always follows the rules. So I would really encourage you to look at your plans and see if there's a space or a place where you can have an overflow parking area.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open up for public comments. As I call your name, please come up, state your name and your address. We have a nifty little box here. The green light will go on. You'll have 3 minutes to talk. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light will come on. And when your time is up, the red light comes on. So bear with me as I look at your names, and everybody's writing is much better than mine, but I may get your name a little bit wrong, but pardon me if I mispronounce. Lee Kroom.
Good evening. My name's Leah Kroom, and I live at 205 Allison Drive. If you're looking at some of the concept maps I've seen, I'm in between A and B. So if you're looking at that map, I'm kind of at the back left-hand corner. My property backs up to this proposed community, and so I'm here tonight to speak against the community on behalf of my neighbors on Allison Drive. My concerns are traffic. I think we've hit that enough. We live across from the Park Meadows townhomes, and in my research for preparing tonight, I understand there's going to be 15 more units in that area. So Park Meadows, 15 more units, these townhomes. From the community meetings, I understand there's going to be mixed use on Chestnut Lane somewhere that may have more townhomes. So really, do we need to add any more to all of that? Storm runoff. Whenever it rains, water comes from this property already, overflows our ditches, beats against her house. The neighbor that lives across from us during the hurricanes, they were basically surrounded by water that comes from this property already. They had it in the front, they had it in the back. Just during a heavy rain, it does that. And so I know in the community meetings, they have addressed, they've got retention ponds and runoff and all that kind of stuff. But what is construction going to do to this already bad problem that we have with water runoff? I noticed in some of the not approved letters that I found online that the engineering department does have some concerns about the runoff. Another concern of mine is just the quality of life. Again, we back up to the woods. We can go out in the woods and we don't have people looking at us. We don't have people in our backyards. There's deer that live in these woods that come through our backyards, so where are they going to go? My kids can go outside and play basketball, ride their bikes. One of the plans I saw online called for a dedicated 50-foot right-of-way for future road extension. So is that road going to come out of the neighborhood and try to connect to Allison, is where we live on, which try to connect to Chestnut, which would create a cut-through from Old Monroe to Chestnut? And if you can only turn right out of all these places and turn in left, you're risking your life on the Old Monroe Road. Is that, what is the future going to hold for that? So not only that, I've lived in Indian Trail all my life, and I've always bragged to people that I can live in Indian Trail, but yet go home to my half an acre where I have woods and nobody looking at me, and I just don't want these townhomes in my backyard. And our neighbors, really, we've talked about putting for sale signs up if all this stuff comes, and moving on the other side of 74 where things aren't so crowded. So again, thank you for listening to my opinions and against this townhome community and what will it do for where we live on Allison Drive.
Thank you for your comments. Willie Morris.
That was me.
Okay. Beverly Leak.
No, go ahead.
One of the rules is we can't switch out and give each other their time, so.
She made comments on what I was going to.
Okay, okay. Chris Todd. Okay. Scott Vickery.
Yes, sir, folks. I'm Scott Vickery. I'm the property owner and lived on Chestnut Lane my 49 years of my life. And it's a great place to live. Indian Trail is a great place to be, and that's why other folks want to be here. And you all see it with the number of projects that are put in front of you. And appreciate the time that you all take on a routine basis to hear things like this and to vet them out. All the concerns that everybody's had are very legitimate concerns. Fact of the matter is, can't just have raw land laying there doing nothing. This, I've worked with the property owners, Mr. John Fosjay. His family's had this land for 100 years. We had several deals done 12 years ago, and for one reason or another, and then the economy, we've just held off till now. We found the right product, the right time, the right developer. That's why we brought it in front of you. As far as the traffic goes, like I say, I live on Chestnut. We improved the intersection at Potter and Chestnut when we did the Austin Village Shopping Center there. At Pleasant Plains and Potter, the intersection is currently underway. They're moving utility poles now to do a full-blown road improvement there. Left turn lanes, all 4 directions, thank goodness. It's been needed a very long time. That will help with a lot of that over there. It's mentioned a couple times, the new interchange at the Siskiyou on Matthews Weddington Road. I think you'll see a lot of traffic shift over that way, and then ultimately the Monroe Road improvement. And the way this construction timing somewhat syncs up with that, I think it's a whole lot better than any other time in the past, as far as, you know, the residents coming online with some of these improvements. And to address the lady's comment about accessibility, that is from a planning standpoint of just a what if. If we don't address it now, then there's no potential in the future. If we do address it, like the property to the west, there's about 6 acres there. We left it so that person could potentially use it at some point. We're not really pushing for those to be used at all. It's just having them there as a tool in case they ever do need to be used. As far as water goes, I understand those folks may have a problem there. It sounds like it. We sure didn't create the problem, and the water's running from north to south, so we're not pushing any water upstream. The engineers can tell you that it will be, you know, less than downstream. That's policy, and you know, I just I feel for you about your water problems, but we're not going to exacerbate those at all. If anything, it should improve some of those.
Okay.
And I thank you for your consideration and hearing us tonight.
Thank you for your comments. Dale Huffman.
Well, it just so happens I happen to be a developer and builder as well. So it gives me a little bit of insight on the situation we've got here. My dad, I used to own that little square that's boxed in right there on 200 Chestnut Lane. I sold it to my parents, and they've still got it. The only thing that I see as an issue, personally, not just from the developer's visual standpoint, because I can't stand to be on this side of that T-chart at the moment, because I do have these conversations too. But the downside of this whole thing, for me, is the amount of traffic on that road. It's going to be much, much worse than what it already is. I mean, I don't know how you can fix that until the Monroe Road issue is taken care of. We sit there sometimes, I'm pretty much skittish of my parent or my dad or any of my family, my sister and brother and 2 of their children live there right now as well. And it makes me nervous as a cat even when I pull out of that driveway 2 or 3 times a week is all it takes. There's so many cars coming off Monroe Road, and by the time they hit the top of that hill, they're doing 50 to 60 miles an hour, more often than the speed limit. It's a cut through, and it takes people from Monroe Road quickly over to the other side. If I didn't live there, that's the way I would cut through if I was going over there. It's virtually impossible on that hill to even hold a speed limit that works in the 35 miles range. It's a dilemma that is just nature of the beast, unfortunately. That's the only complaint that I've got about if there's not anything being done about the amount of traffic, not necessarily the amount of traffic, but controlling the traffic. If it's not possible to get those people to drive at a normal, obviously correct speed, then adding, and we're thinking 100, almost 200 or more cars in one little piece of property on a two-lane road with only one traffic light. I mean, I don't know how we can expect, and gentlemen, as a developer, I understand that this is not the comment that I really feel like making, because I feel like we're on the same side. But at the end of the day, there's got to be something to do with that traffic to get this to work properly. And I don't know, unless you redesign some of the ins and outs that make it bulletproof in some way, I have issues with it. But that's really the only thing. And I don't know how to fix that myself. If I was in the situation, I wouldn't know how to fix it other than put a light on Monroe Road, which we can't do. Not right away, anyway. So, I mean, for me, it's a timing issue. I mean, would have no if there was a light on Monroe Road, I wouldn't be standing here whining at all. I'm sure I wouldn't. I mean, there'll be a lot more traffic still yet, but if you got lights, at least there's a little bit of that feeling of, hey, got some controls out here. I mean, it backs up many, many times past my dad's house trying to get on Monroe Road right now. And the people that make the turn to go the other direction, no doubt, I've yet to ever see anybody do the speed limit on that road. Not once.
Something happened to our yellow light, but I think that's in the,
Is that it? I'm good.
I didn't see it. Okay, I guess I'm colorblind.
That's
Okay.
all I needed to say. I don't know what you can do with it, but I'm just saying.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
All right, thank you.
This time, we're closing public comments. Now, any discussion from the board?
Oh, yes, I
Okay.
do. Do I address it?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. It gives me a lot of insight to how I'm thinking about this whole project. I guess this would be a concern between you and the builders. My concern is, what can the property owners do to address the neighbors' concerns, like the water runoff and the privacy? Because that's a big concern, because if my property was near there, I would, I mean, I know we need to progress and make this a user-friendly, community, but apparently it's a little challenge because we do have issues that we don't want to ignore. So I guess as property owners, my concern is what are your plans as far as helping with the water runoffs as well as providing privacy for the neighbors, for your neighbors? Yes, whoever's a property
I don't
owner.
want to speak when I'm not supposed to, so.
Okay, whoever's a property owner, builders, or whoever construction.
Be an engineer to address it.
I can talk about the stormwater. We have looked at this, obviously the topography of this area and looking at your concerns. We conceive the existing flow of the water. We can understand why you're saying what you're saying. What we'll be doing is collecting all of the stormwater from the site and putting it obviously into pipes in the road. And then we will send it to that pond that's down on the lower left-hand corner. And it's basically going to be a detention pond. It'll probably be a dry pond. We will hold water there and release it slowly over 48 hours. And we'll be releasing it down in the bottom left-hand corner, somewhere down that area, so that ultimately it heads out to basically the ditch that's on Chestnut. After we're done, I think all the property to the west of our property line is going to be seeing quite a bit less water than they're seeing now, because instead of just kind of flowing across and entering all those properties, we're taking it, pulling it in, putting it into one central location, then outletting it at one central location that's not going to get on anyone's property. So I feel very good about the stormwater issue. The buffer along the western side, we have a buffer all the way around. Obviously, this site is along the perimeter. Most of it's fairly wooded, so we want to try to leave those woods in place as much as possible. There are areas that don't have trees, in which case we will be planting. The town has a buffer requirement, so many trees, so many shrubs every 100 linear feet. And so if there are areas of this buffer that don't meet that requirement, then we will be going in and we will be planting trees and shrubs to make sure that we meet that requirement.
Okay. If by them doing that, will that will that be better off on your property by them having more shrubs? Or you looking for more like a fence or build or something that's? Yeah, okay, I'm just asking. This is just a question I'm asking. And, I guess this would be for the town. Have you guys considered like something to, reduce the traffic, not the traffic, but bring the traffic down, like a speed limit down, like speed bumps, the traffic light, something? I don't know who should I be asking that question to, but.
So I can answer that in two pieces. One is actually, our town manager had suggested that the development team reach out to NCDOT to see if a speed limit reduction made sense in this area, and I guess that can be discussed when they follow up with the district engineer. I think the second part is, I mean, largely, this is an NCDOT road, so we are beholden to follow their guidance on the improvements to be made within their road system. It's obviously it's not this is a 116 unit project. So while it does produce traffic, it is not like a new shopping center where you're going to see, road improvements across, the area. I know there's been some desire to see some improvements or something at Chestnut and Old Monroe Road. That seems to be really the problem child. There, will be a dramatic change at that intersection once the Super Street improvements go in. So you're not going to have that left out movement, which is really, kind of scary depending on what time of day you're driving it to go out. People are going to be forced to go right, like towards Sun Valley, and then do a U-turn if they're trying to get to Matthews or Charlotte. So, with the Old Monroe Super Street improvements, you're going to see a dramatic transformation of that intersection and how it functions than what it does today. And so I just offer that for your consideration.
Okay, when is the date, what's the start date for that?
I believe, it's certainly, as we know with road agencies, subject to change, but I believe 2022, roughly 3-year project, a 3-year construction cycle to 2025.
So basically, his property could be put up before that whole
Based on the
scenario
timeline
would
that's been
be.
described, yes,
You're saying completed by 2025 if they don't change?
that is correct.
Okay.
And so in the meantime, the town of Indian Trail can't do anything about the safety of Chestnut with approximately, how many families again can be coming to that unit?
Showing 116 units.
So 116 units, so 100 plus families.
So as I understand it, one of the things that the development team and NCDOT are coordinating on is doing what's called a site distance analysis. And so with that analysis, it's looking at, the actual curvature of the road, that's horizontal, side to side, and vertical, low to high, and looking at the two entrance point locations as well as other impediments, other driveways and impediments in the area, and seeing in great detail or confirming, does it meet the NCDOT guidelines for site distance? Is it safe?
Right.
And so that's part of the coordination. The development team is working with NCDOT, because at the end of the day, if it's got a site distance issue, the driveways, they're not going to get a driveway permit from the state.
Okay.
So that is going on one camp, and then parallel to that is what's been discussed separately is, it may make sense reevaluating the speed on that section of road, or a combination of those two, confirming their site distance and maybe looking at a speed reduction to see if, and enforcement usually has to come with that reduction process, to see if those types of improvements can be done to make that section of Chestnut that much more safer, since you're putting 116 units.
So they can't, so there's no way you guys can put a because I got into an accident all over there. Now, there's no way they can put a traffic light there, even until the NDOT, till the Department of North Carolina decides to pick up their feet and move. There's
town-
no way they can put a traffic light there.
The town nor the developer can put a traffic light up there. The traffic signals are put up when signals, when warrants are met, and DOT has not seen fit to put a light there, nor will the Super Street improvements have a traffic signal there.
Okay.
Rox, I have a question. This property is zoned for residential use, right? So ultimately, people are, there's going to be a development here, right? I mean, if it keeps the current zone that it is right now, I mean, it is a residential mixed, right?
The current zoning is for low-density residential, just residential, no
What
commercial.
What is the number that changes it, low density to high density, since this is a 116 unit development? What is I'm curious, just what is low density considered?
And it's so many square feet per acre.
If you look at our comprehensive plan, it calls for low density, it's 0 to 2 units an acre, and high density goes up to 4 to 6 units an acre. And what's this one at? Just over 6
Okay.
units an acre.
Okay.
So currently, again, that would be 0 to 2 units an acre, and we're looking at slightly over 6 units an acre.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Wait, one more. So you guys couldn't even put speed bumps up? I'm just asking.
Not
Something
on
has to be
Chestnut.
done. It's a serious situation until some kid gets killed or something like that. You know, so the town Indian Trail could not put speed bumps up?
Not on Chestnut, no ma'am.
Wow, okay.
My comment is that speed bumps or not, speed limits or not, you've got the intersection of Chestnut Lane and Monroe Road, and trying to take a left out of there. You got 200 cars potentially coming out of a subdivision like this, and I don't know. That's the most dangerous point, and that's already a log jam right there on Monroe Road and Chestnut. In fact, there's almost a turn lane on the right-hand side where people have ruts to go around people that are trying to make a left. So I think I don't have a problem with the subdivision at all, but I think it's too early with the road completion being 2025. That's my comment.
If I just make a comment really, and I guess it's more so, not necessarily to the developer, even more so to the town, just, you know, in conversation, we always talk to our friends or neighbors, the two biggest things is traffic and schools. I'm surprised you didn't talk about schools.
I'm not done yet.
Okay, all right. But that's even the write-up in terms of the schools and I guess the capacity specifically of the middle and high school. And I know that we can't really control that, from the town standpoint, but, when we look at it, at the 116 unit townhome development, and I think the tally was 73 students. So 73 is kind of not necessarily is that the hair that broke the camel's back? We've got all these pockets of developments and apartments being built that haven't even been completed yet, and we're still that far at capacity in terms of the schools. Development, I think, from a use standpoint, it's going to be someone's going to build or someone's going to move in there. Townhouses certainly fits the need. I like it. Traffic, I think, will be improved, I think, with Monroe Road. So my concern isn't so much that, but mainly going back to schools. It's just we have so much in plans and in various stages that we haven't even really felt kind of where we are in terms of our school population, and that's just a big concern of mine. So more so a comment than a question.
Well, just to address the school, the reason why I haven't brought up the schools, because there's a lot of changes within the elementary school level. So it actually, right now, the pocket of kids right now are like middle school and high school, as of right now. So we don't know what all the changes in the school system and with the rezoning and things like that. It may not affect the schools as much as from the elementary standpoint, but I can't speak for the high school right now and the middle school areas for Sun Valley I can speak of will be impacted, depends on what types of families will come in. We don't know that, you know what I mean? Right now, the elementary schools are okay, but it depends on which elementary schools I believe this might be Indian Trail. This may be Indian Trail schools based on where it's at. It may affect that enrollment. But if it's Sun Valley or Shiloh, it may not be as present right this second. But with people moving in and out, it's kind of hard to determine how much of an impact this particular property will have on schools. So that's why I didn't really address it. My concern is just the safety, that if this property is even worth putting in this spot at this particular time with the roads being questionable. So to address schools at this particular time may not be a pressing situation. I'm more concerned about how you're going to get people in and out of the community safely on top of the traffic that we already have.
Any other comments? Okay.
Just one other thing. I know everybody's concerned about the traffic, and this thing is not going to be instantly put out there. And as was mentioned earlier, it's going to take several years for it to be built out. And if I've heard correctly, it's going to be several years before Old Monroe Road is actually the improvements. And so hopefully these two will coincide and come out about the same time from what I'm hearing here. And also, as was mentioned earlier, the Weddington Road, there's supposed to be an interchange over near the Siskiyou Y on Weddington Road. So that's going to eliminate some of the, everybody having to go to Old Monroe Road. There will be coming out and turning going up toward toward Potter Road and going in that general direction. So, you know, it's like I say, it's not going to happen all at one time, but I think hopefully these two items, the build out on this and the Old Monroe Road improvements and the interchange on 485 will help eliminate all this thing. Hopefully this thing will come out smoothly. So that's my comments.
So you were going to, acquisition of the property would be this year, construction would begin in 2020 or 2021?
Well, horizontal development will begin next year, 2020.
Mhm.
Home construction, 2021.
Okay, so conceivably, the other concern I have is that if construction on Monroe Road and your construction starts at the same time, then you're going to have a period of time where you really got a mess on that road. Okay, we're going to go to whether to, a motion to approve or to deny. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion, but it's not to approve. Which one? I'm not
You have to
yet.
say approve or deny.
Okay, I'll deny for this time.
Okay, do
And
we have a
why?
second?
Oh.
Just need a
Sorry, is there a
motion made.
question?
You just need a motion made.
Excuse me?
Oh,
There was a motion made.
Okay, yes, a motion made to deny at this particular time, because I still need to look at it. I don't feel comfortable, with the concerns from the neighbors, and we want to, practice good neighbor policies as well as we have concerns with traffic and things like that.
One thing I want to add, which I should have prior to,
Yeah.
to our discussions up here, is we are strictly a recommending board. And so from here, it would go to the town council. I've seen us recommend and the town council decide not to do it. I've seen us recommend not to do it and the council recommend to do it. So the next step would be it will go to the town council. So at this point, we have a, excuse me, Chris.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to raise a question. So, I definitely have heard loud and clear that there's concerns about the traffic and what happens in that gap period between when the project's, in theory, built out and when the Old Monroe improvements go live. And there's also some commentary about buffering and separation, and the applicants talked a little bit about, of the buffering that will be provided around the property. I'm just raising a question, is there any information that would be helpful to the planning board that, the applicant could come back and share separately or research on, before they go to the council and present at that time? Is there anything that, some feedback you can share that would be helpful, that might alleviate your concerns, based on the information you've received so far?
I would like additional information on how that water is flowing, because after, the problem that we had before, I wouldn't want, these people to be flooded out of their homes or have, some sort of issue
So,
that is costly to resolve.
So what I heard from the presentation is that, the water's gonna be coming in essence from top to bottom and going into the pond structure that's in the, in the bottom left-hand corner of the site, and
I-
then released into the ditch at a controlled rate.
Yes, but I want to make sure that this is done, because,
Well, it's engineering specs and
yeah, I know. but-
requirements.
But look at the cost from the other project that occurred.
But, can correct me if I'm wrong, by law, they have to. I mean, they can't increase runoff at all. They can't take any water on their property and discharge it anywhere other than that stormwater outfall. And it has to be at a rate less than what it is now, or the state won't allow them to have one
Yeah.
certificate of occupancy
Yeah.
for any of the development. So, yeah, I mean.
I just don't want to see another Ashcroft.
And I completely understand where you're coming from, but I guess my point is, I think that, again, to the engineering and development side, they've showed everything that has been required of them. And again, state law dictates that they have to. They can't, a drop of water can't leave their site without running through there. It can't.
if I'm not mistaken, didn't Ashcroft occur because people were encroaching upon the drainage ditch there with additions and?
It's a major contributor to the problem, yes.
Right, yeah. Okay, we have a motion on the table to deny. Do we have a second to the motion? If there's no second to the motion, then I guess we go to, is there a motion to accept? Is that correct, Crystal?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to, for public item CZ 2018-0100 Hopper Run to be approved based on the findings of the staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, it's passed. Excuse me. Well, you can't really say for additional findings, it's passed, so. Okay, I guess at this point, we close the session, then we go to the tree board, is that correct?
That'd be correct. We have no other business or planning report this evening, so we can go on to the tree board. Maybe if you want to take a minute to let the room clear and start up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Calling back in session after the break. We're going to, this time, we're going to adjourn the planning board, and then we'll go into the tree board. So do I have a motion to adjourn our regular planning board?
I make a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting.
And I second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay, now we're going to start the March 2019 tree board. Okay, start roll call again. Cheryl Mimi,
Present.
Michelle Reeves,
Here.
John Kilman,
Present.
Samantha Towns,
Present.
Dennis Gay here, Jordan Noblet,
Still here.
Sydney Sandy. Okay. Now I'll turn it over to, Rox, are you handling the tree?
I am, but I think we need to approve the minutes.
You have to approve the minutes.
All right, we'll have a motion to approve the minutes. I'm sorry, I didn't have that in front of me that I noticed. Ms. Towns,
I'll make a motion to approve.
do we have a second?
I second.
Second.
Oh.
All in favor, right hand. It's approved. Now we go to the discussion item, Redstone Materials. So we have a
Right.
presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the tree board. It's a pleasure being before you. They dusted me off and brought me up here to talk to you about an alternative landscape plan for Redstone Materials. Just give you kind of a background and overview of the location as well. The location of the subject property is within the Industrial Ventures Business Park, kind of an older park within our community, accessed off of US 74. The specific site is located on Persimmon Court, 4804, and I've tried to outline it here in the aerial map. It's actually has frontages on two roads, Persimmon Court and East Fork Lane. And as you can see, it's kind of an elongated property with these two road frontages, roughly just under 3 acres in size. The applicant, Redstone Materials, wishes to develop the property for kind of an office, warehouse, and distribution center type use. Now, the reason the tree board is, the reason this item is on the tree board's agenda is the property backs up to an older residential area, which the ordinances requires a 50-foot landscape buffer to separate this kind of light industrial use to the residential use. The applicant, in light of some challenges with the subject property's configuration, would like to reduce that buffer from 50 feet to 25 feet. And we'll talk about that a little bit, talk about that in a little more detail as we progress through this. Just to get you familiar with the residential area, the residential community is largely coming from Haywood Road. So you would come in from, start from Seacrest Shortcut. If you were coming, let's say, from like our park or Hemby Bridge, you'd make a right onto Haywood and then travel a mile or so down the road and you would reach kind of an end. And if you see sort of the end of Haywood Road here, and I know you can't see my laser pointer on your screens, but that is in essence the applicant's property here, kind of through the end of Haywood Road. When you get to that end of Haywood Road, you see the picture on the top. That's what the wooded area looks like to the left, and to the area on the bottom photo is what the property looks like towards the right. So again, straight on view of Haywood Road. Then on top is the left-hand side of the wooded area backing up to the subject property, and then the right-hand side as well. So just give you some kind of characterization of what the residential area, how it appears. This is just an overview of the site layout for the plan. It also, at a high level, shows you some of the landscape features. We'll jump into a detailed drawing in just a moment. But just to kind of show you how the site is proposed to function, they're currently going through our site plan review process that this application is a component of. But they're taking their primary access off of Persimmon Court down on the bottom of the drawing. As you can see, trucks or vehicles would come in and go into the kind of warehouse distribution type building, and then they could either leave on Persimmon or they could go up and out on East Fork. There's also, right now, you can see here in the gray shading, what is proposed as an outdoor storage area, and that's how it would be used in the near term. Long term, I think there's a desire to put another building on the site when the market demands and it makes sense from the business program. The area being requested for a buffer reduction is behind the building and behind the storage area here. So this is the area that is under request to go from 50 feet to 25 feet. And it's not readily apparent, or maybe to your eye, but to others it may not be. There is a power line that runs right down the middle of this buffer area as well that has an approximately 15-foot wide easement. That line also cuts across the site, but doesn't really impact any other landscape areas significantly. So going into kind of more of a detailed perspective drawing, this shows you what the 25-foot buffer would generally look like as proposed. Again, to the right, you have the proposed warehouse building that you saw the footprint for earlier. Coming off that building, the applicant would like to propose some cedar or other types of evergreen trees, and that would line that area. Beyond that, the applicant would also like to install a 5-foot tall vinyl kind of privacy fence. That's it creates some screening value, but also they just want to create separation from their business property from the residential area. And again, as we've mentioned before, there are some restrictions with the power line easement, and so they would then transition at the toe of the property. This would be right up against the residential area. planting some evergreen shrubbery, some tall evergreen shrubbery, like a holly species or something of similar nature. Now, the staff has provided the applicant with just some preliminary comments. These are just a more of a technical, or not even technical nature, but just of a micro, level. And that is, just, if, in their planting arrangements, to consider using a mix of species of trees versus single species, same with the same comment being provided for the shrubs. And we've recommended they intersperse some arborvitae green giants there, so it's not, again, single species. If you recall, there are some shrubs at the toe of that slope against the residential area. Right now, those are being proposed at 24 inches. That's kind of standard for like a parking lot or other areas. We're proposing a more mature planting size being used there, since we're talking about a screening element. We've asked, recommended the introduction of ground cover, and also to identify an irrigation method, since it's a pretty big planted area, and we want to know how it's going to be watered so it'll maintain and thrive in the future. So in terms of public feedback, we do, it's not really required by our ordinance, but as a courtesy, we always send a mailed notice to any property that would be affected by an alternative buffer plan. And so we sent letters to all the abutting property owners. We did receive feedback from one owner, Mr. Harless Meters, who's the owner of 3432 Haywood Road. And he indicated his family also owns some adjacent land. He conveyed that he was against the buffer reduction, and I'm just kind of quoting an email I received from him, because he feels it's going to encroach on the quiet and kind of family nature of the neighborhood. So in terms of next steps, ultimately I'm asking for a recommendation from the tree board, and to recommend approval as the applicant's proposed, recommend with some modifications, or to recommend disapproval. But ultimately, the planning director will make the final decision on the alternative buffer. This is sort of some feedback, sounding board advice for the planning director to make the best decision possible. Kind of similar in the way you just did for the town council in that rezoning decision earlier. So the applicant is here, and I think they have they'd like an opportunity to share a few words about the the site, maybe further describe some of the challenges they have in designing it and for its intended purpose of light industrial, and certainly could answer any other questions about the plan that they've put forth.
Question for you. So we have an email from this gentleman, but he's not here to address us tonight, is that correct?
As I understand it, there are. You are here. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, any discussion? Any questions?
I would like to hear from the owner, the person who's built.
We
yes.
will.
Oh, well,
We
okay,
just
I'm
want to have a
sorry. All
discussion
right.
right now on any questions about
Yeah.
what Rox has gone over.
Yeah, how
Ms.
tall
Towns.
are the utility poles why is there a need for a 50-foot if you have utility poles there?
I think the utility poles are an existing condition that's on the property now, and it looks like they're probably, just based on this perspective that we're looking at here, 12 or 15 feet off the property line. So it kind of runs.
No, I'm referring to in height,
Okay.
because, if you have wires running and you have a 50-foot tree, shrub, whatever, and, if the utility lines are going through the shrub, there will be no need for a 50-foot shrub.
Right, so if you look at this drawing here that's on your screen, I think what the applicant is trying to propose is, generally speaking, staying outside of the utility corridor area to prevent any kind of conflict that would require the utility owner to come in and remove or trim down, the landscaping, basically prevent a conflict from occurring. So what they're proposing to do is work on the two outside edges of this 25-foot area. On the top, you can see obviously it slopes up to the project, to the building site. So their desire is to plant trees on the tall end, on the high end of the slope, and then on the low side, plant shrubs, but really on the outside of the easement for the utilities, so there wouldn't be a conflict. Yes, please, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, Samantha. The eastern red cedar, those are larger shrubs. They tend to be 20 to 30 feet tall in height. And what it looked like per the plan the applicant was proposing was just a continuous row of these red cedars or something similar in plant size
No, I
and
have
type.
no qualms
And-
about that. I'm just worried about lines hitting these trees and possibly starting fires
Well,
and
the nature,
lightning, whatever.
right, the nature of the plant, it's a very compact and narrow upright in form. It doesn't spread like a tree. It's, again, are you familiar with arborvitae?
No.
Okay. It's, it looks a lot like, I mean, red
I know
cedar
about the
looks a lot
Lelands.
like, well, it looks a lot like what this
It was like a leaning
section,
cypress.
it looks like what the section shows. That's the plant makeup of the plant that they're proposing. That's indeed what it looks like. And it's a little bit taller than that after 30 years, but this is just kind of what they showed.
Any other questions, comments, whatever, before we have the
I just
applicant?
want to make sure I'm understanding right. So what they're asking is for 25 feet of less tree line, right?
Correct.
And then they're going to enforce the actual tree line at that 25-foot mark with more trees?
That's correct. So if the site was landscaped per the exact requirements of the code,
Right.
there would be a 50-foot planted space between, on the far edge of the property, you know, buffering the residential area. They're asking, in light of, and I'll let them, you know, describe the site a little bit more and why they feel it's justified. In light of, you know, the challenges with the property, they're asking to go from 50 feet to 25 feet and plant it in a manner similar to what you're seeing in this little detailed drawing.
Okay. So, yes, add additional plants on the front line.
Yeah, on the two edges, yes. Gotcha. Please.
What's the ratio for that type of buffer? Like, do you recall, I don't offhand, how many
Okay,
plants
so-
per 100 feet?
Yeah, in terms of the planting of those, I don't know what the spacing standard was on your trees. You're probably at it, and we can look into that further, but, you're probably looking at, with that tree spacing, I mean, with the eastern red cedar, I mean, you're probably, 15 feet on center, or some, plus or minus. And they would be planted, the trees would be 8 feet in height at time of planting.
Everybody satisfied? We'd like to hear any comments from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Brian Upton with the Isaacs Group. I'm the engineer for the project, and thanks, Rox, for doing a good presentation on that. As he mentioned, that this site is a little unusual in shape, which has presented some engineering challenges to be able to develop the property the way the owner wants to do it. He has larger trucks coming into the property, so being able to maneuver the trucks in and around the building, land was at a premium, so that's why we were requesting to be able to reduce the buffer, still providing the same amount of trees that would be in the buffer area, but making it so that it's a softer edge, again, putting the trees closer to the building to break up the massing of the building from the neighboring property. Again, also, I guess, to the north, we have a temporary storage area that the buffer continues along the entire property line at that width. Again, just making sure that we've provided adequate room for what the owner's needs are for to run his business and to be able to maneuver his trucks around the site. If anybody has any further questions about that, and the owner's also here that have questions about his operation.
Any questions?
What exactly, when you talk, heavy trucks, I just read the description, is it heavy in terms of the weight of the truck or heavy in terms of the volume of traffic?
The weight.
Okay.
They're just bigger trucks, tractor trailers, dump trucks, type things that would be coming around on the site. Not necessarily the volume of it, it's just the size of the truck.
What would the volume be?
It's a light application, it's not a heavy application. This site is, I can speak more about it, but this site is more just for my brother and I. We both own the land and we're developing it for ourselves, for our own use, for our business, but also for personal use. We'd like to store ATVs and boats inside of our warehouse. We'd like to build something for our family, for us to be able to use. But in terms of use, I'm not sure, I guess the question is in terms of how many trucks would come
I
and
mean,
go?
how many trucks a day would be coming in and out, and would it be a consistent thing, or just in the beginning?
No, the warehouse would be used, we'd have two bay doors on the backside for like a tractor trailer, and then we'd have roll-up doors on the front side just for easy access and going. It just depends on, the business. The site can only handle so much, just given its natural space. So once the business, if the business is successful and keeps growing and outgrows it, then we would move from this site. We wouldn't be able to stay there.
But generally speaking, how many trucks a day would you think?
10, I would say probably maybe 10 trucks would come and
10
go.
trucks.
To a maximum of maybe 15. It's hard to say. The space itself is not as big as, let's say, a much larger space, so we're limited by its size, and then we would act accordingly, I guess.
Any other questions?
Can you go back to the slide that has the building and then the tree and the utility? So the 50-foot, reducing it down to 25, is the proposed building going to be in the space that the buffer would be reduced by? So are we going to put the building closer to, I guess, talk to me about I
Right.
guess, where that building's going to be in terms of the property line?
Right, yeah, the building itself is probably going to be about 30 feet or so off of the property line, maybe a little more. So we'd have the 25-foot buffer, and then there would be a little bit of room, a few feet between the actual buffer and the building itself.
And then that building would have the bay doors, trucks going in and out?
On the other side, right now, that's what this is on the side of the buffer, is just a blank wall. Right. So the trucks are coming in and out on the left-hand side of the building.
What hours of operation would you be having the trucks come in and out?
Just business hours, usually 8, 7, and then finish around 5.
5 days a week?
5 days a week. We generally have no plans to work Sundays or Saturdays. Saturdays, it's just more or less personal stuff and just doing stuff around there, but.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it up for, you got a question?
No, I was trying to see.
Oh, I'd like to open it up for public comment. If you will, please come up as I call you, state your name and your address. You'll have 3 minutes for your comments. When the green light comes on, you'll have the 3 minutes. With 30 seconds left, you'll have a yellow light, and then when the red light goes, and we'll ask you to wrap it up. So at this time, we would like Mr. Metters to come up.
Good afternoon. My name is Harless Metters. I own property 3422 Haywood Road. I also represent the Horton heirs, which also own adjoining property in the same area. When we looked at the early screens and you saw it deads in at Haywood Road, and you looked to the right, you saw one property, you looked to the left, and you saw what appears to be a wooded area. There is some woods there, but in the past, there were 4 different homes in that wooded area. It's just grown up over time. It is designed to be a residential area. My family, going back to my grandfather, we've owned that land for over 100 years. And as the community has grown, the light industrial area has just sort of come in close to us. And it's changing the feel of the environment. We would like to keep the 50-foot buffer. We think it gives us a little bit more privacy. And if at some point we choose to come back and to build more homes on that family land, we could look out our back door, and instead of being 25 feet from the back of a factory, and at least there's a little bit buffer for us to have yard and access to that. I don't think that Redstone is a bad neighbor. I actually met Mr. Reddick, they're a very, very nice guy. But I'm also concerned about if we reduce that 50-foot buffer for him, the other property owners that going to develop adjacent to him, there's more lots down there too, they may want to also come and ask for the same reduction, bringing their property line closer to our property line also. I think we're just two really good guys, to be honest with you, with just varying interests. His makes it more convenient for him to operate his business. I understand that from 9 to 5 business hours, but we live there 24 hours a day, and I think that it could become a nuisance for us. So we stand opposed to reducing the buffer, and I think the City of Indian Trail has an ordinance requiring a 50-foot buffer to give us that leeway from residential light industrial.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Jerry Morris.
Hi, excuse me, Jerry Morris, 271 Unionville Indian Trail Road. And first off, thank you all for your service up here, serving the town and the residents of Indian Trail. Well spoken. I agree with this gentleman's concerns. You know, the residents have been there a long time. There is a reason for a 50-foot buffer. It is to give some separation between quiet life at your home and business world. I don't think that it's a good decision or to reduce this to 25 foot. Perhaps there's some, in the beginning I was believing maybe there would be some kind of compromise and split 20.
It can't be right.
That was a quick one.
Wasn't turned off.
But maybe, be a compromise between the 25 and the 50 foot, 37 and a half or something. But after I heard how far that the proposed building would be, then that wouldn't work as well. Once you decrease this buffer, if that is the decision, and let's say that business does move and another business does move in, and maybe it has a little bit more of a noise impact, maybe that additional 25-foot of buffer could help abate that noise. And I'm very pro-business, so it's really hard for me to stand up here and look at the gentleman and say, I hate to see you do this, but my primary concern will always be with the residents of this town, and I think it would be very short-sighted to make an exception on this particular piece of property. Thank you all.
Thank you. Comments? Questions? Sure. Yeah, go right ahead.
My name is Ruben Raddick. I own this piece of land with my brother. We have a business together, but we own it in our other interest as an LLC as just a business, but also as personal property for us. This process I've started probably over 2 years ago, I'd like to say. I don't even think Rox was here when I first started looking at this piece of land and talking to people about it. It was a piece of land that was neglected. It was designed in 1984. This entire business park was designed and it was zoned as light industrial sometime in the 90s, early 90s, and this piece of land was actually carved out the way it was carved out in the early 90s. Back then, there was no city ordinance requiring 50-foot buffers, if I'm not mistaken. There was no ordinance requiring any setbacks, and given the challenges of this space, by shrinking, by trying to maintain that 50-foot buffer, it would push the building over, creating some more challenges for traffic to come in and out, which would create either storage behind the building, which would directly impact the neighbors, or consistent traffic backing up, moving back and forth, as opposed to just coming in smoothly. So that's one of the main reasons. We've kind of looked at every different angle. We've kind of debated it and looked back and forth, and I've been going about it with Brian for quite some time, trying to figure out how to properly position it. And the way we currently have it configured, it's, in our opinion, it's the most conducive for the people who will be around us and the people, and for ourselves as a business. That extra space is needed just to be able to safely maneuver back and forth. It's not needed to try to increase extra space or anything like that. It's literally needed to be able to back a truck in safely, not to have any accidents, not to have people panicking trying to back in. And that's why we're asking for this added additional space and trying to give us some breathing room, basically. On the storage side, this business functions, we're human beings as well. We have families, we have kids. It provides jobs in the community. It provides work for people that live in Indian Trail and working in Matthews and different areas around here that work with us and work for us. So we work together in that space. We have families. We go out. We're not going to be there 24/7. It's not intended to be a factory. It's intended to be a warehouse. So to characterize it as a factory or anything like that would be wrong. It's truly intended to be as a warehouse space. The neighbors on either side of us that they're referring to directly behind us, they have 3 acres of a perfect square. All the lots behind us there's only 2 lots remaining that are undeveloped in the entire community, including ours. The ones directly behind us are perfect squares. So if they were to develop it, they could position a building in any corner they would like, and if they had to maintain a 50-foot buffer, it'd be very easy for them to do. It wouldn't impact their business in any way at all. So in our case, our land is really what's constricting the design of our land, the way it was carved out in 1992, I believe, is when the deed was written. It's an extreme challenge for us to try to fit what we'd like to do and how we'd like to do it and how we'd like to operate our business in that and meet the requirements. And that's what we're asking for, that 25-foot buffer. The power lines run the entire length of our property with our residential neighbors. Like I said, I met them today. They're good people. I don't think there's anything wrong with what they're asking for. I think they're trying to defend their interests. And on our side, we're trying to defend our interest in being able to operate a business in the space. That's zoned light industrial, and it was zoned for many, many years before we even got to purchasing it. We purchased it with a buy right to be able to put this particular project and build it and do it on this space. And like I said, this project is for us. We're not developers or anything like that. We're planning to build it and use it. So if we're given the opportunity to build it the way we'd like to build it, we'll be neighbors with these folks for hopefully many years, and we intend to have good relationships with them. Thank you for your time.
Questions, comments?
So the ordinance is definitely, sorry, the ordinance is definitely 50 foot. That's right. Okay. All right.
I guess I have a general comment, and looking at this from a design perspective, I hear the owner say, we can't push the building forward. I get it. You got to have circulation internal to the property. I guess my first thought, and I don't even know if you guys have even looked at this, is I think you can still pull the back end of that building in 25 feet, grow it to the north, since you're just using the area to the north. I guess right now that's shown as outdoor storage area. You could shift all that pavement up. You could grow the warehouse to whatever you take in. You can extend up, because that's just outdoor storage space. And so you're just shifting that piece of asphalt up, and all you're trimming out then is your future outdoor storage space. You would pull in 25 feet and on the building to allow for 25 more feet, but whatever square footage you lost, you would then pick up on the top side, push everything up. You're going to lose some outdoor storage space that way, but I feel like you could still accomplish getting that 50-foot buffer in by doing it that way.
The building dimensions are actually 70 feet wide. So by shrinking by 25, basically be 45 feet wide. It's no bigger than, it's like a couple storage units. You know what I mean? It wouldn't serve a function for us as a business by shrinking it, by making it that narrow. It would be, for what we do, would be very challenging. 70 feet is like wide is one of the narrowest. I asked to be wider, but Brian came back and said circulation and traffic, you need to be at a bare minimum 70. Like we have to come back that far just to provide the necessary parking and traffic.
I'm pro-business, but somebody who's on land 100 years, I put a lot of stock in that, so.
That zoning, that area was rezoned in the 90s. It wasn't zoned light industrial, it was rezoned. Everybody had an opportunity to make comment at that time about the zoning aspects of it. It was approved by a board like yourselves, and people had an opportunity to comment.
Would you guys be open to, maybe not up against the building, but north of the warehouse property, increasing that to 50 feet and eating into the outdoor storage area in order to achieve it's going to average more than 25, but it's going to be less than 50, but it's at least some sort of compromise on that. Is that something you guys would be willing to look at?
And I just want to confirm the planning director is the one that ultimately is going to make this decision, right? We're just here to have a discussion, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, actually, it'll go to council, won't it? It won't go to council? Okay.
I ask that you be careful of what you do, because again, although their other land hasn't been developed, it's going to be developed at some point. And you're going to be put back in the same situation. The current plan there shows one building, one warehouse being constructed, and the other place being dry storage, which is fine for now, but it won't always be dry storage. There could be another building that they may want to build 10 years from now. Business is going great, hey, we need more area, and that dry storage becomes another building within that 25-foot barrier that they're asking for. And if it's within that 25-foot barrier, if we build on that lot, we look outside our back door and it's right in our back, it's not in our backyard, it's on their property, but it's there.
Excuse me,
Mr.
how
Chairman.
long did you say you owned this land?
I said my family's owned the land for over 100 years.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a unique piece of property, and it's, and I don't think it fits their needs, and I think we need to leave it at a 50-foot buffer.
That's right.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Make a motion.
Precedent.
Because the thing is, just like they say, if we allow 25, then it's going to be somebody else from somewhere
Yeah,
else
they're
going to
gonna
ask the
want
same thing. Well, they're going to say,
10,
hey, well, you allowed this particular property. It'll, you know,
I think it's important to also note that this entire land,
right.
this entire, that's what I'm saying. The entire land wasn't developed in the 2000s.
Right.
It was developed in 1986. And the entire project, I mean, this piece of land is the last piece of land in the area. It was cut out in 1992. The ordinance that the town has never existed. So the way they design the land, like today, if you were building a house, you'd want to have like an acre, right? And if you require septics, like all the properties behind me require septics. I don't know what the ordinances are for septics, but some of those lots look way too small to build anything on. So that being said, you know, the majority of the properties are vacant, and there's a lot of, they're not being used. So when will they be developed? At what point? It was 1992 when this was created, and there was no ordinance. I think if there was an ordinance for it, somebody would have at least pushed it out, knowing that if there was going to be a building or something there, that they would come. Like if I was gonna, if I owned that land, I would never develop a sliver like that and sell it. I would definitely factor in 25 feet, 50 feet, whatever the requirement is, because that's important.
I would just ask that for the tree board, we don't have quite all the formality of the planning board does, but I would ask that maybe I think we've received a lot of public comments, and it's not intended to be a back and forth. If the tree board has some questions for the applicant or the interested citizens, I think that's fine. But ultimately, I think the tree board needs to deliberate and ultimately come up with its recommendations.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, there's the optimum that you want and the optimum that the landowner wants. And if, I mean, it looks like we're, to the applicant, it looks like we're on the verge of staying with the, with the 50-foot buffer. And I know that, you want to optimize what you're doing, but, I mean, and I'm not one typically to kick the can down the road, but do you want to take a little bit of time and look at it from different directions? And you may lose a little bit, but, I mean, rather than us automatically say, 50-foot stays, do you want to take another look at it and come back another time? Or what's your thoughts on it?
Like I said, we've been doing this. I'm sorry, there we go. We've been, I've been looking at this project for 2 years.
Right.
We've been I've been talking to Todd, I've been talking to Rox, we've been going over and over this project. In this configuration, and you can ask Rox, we've tried our hardest to do a number of different things the best way we could, and this is the configuration that works. I understand the concern of 50 versus 25. You're not going to change whether you see my building at 25 or 50. You're not going to be able to use my space either. It's my green space. You can't walk over there. You can't, it's my land. From a safety perspective, more than anything, there's going to be a fence there to protect any child or anybody from the community, from a residential, just walking over and, God forbid, hurting themselves on our land, right? And that's our number one desire, to protect that. We're going to have ample tree coverage there. I think, if anything, we're going to make that piece of property look better. Our goal is not to make it delinquent, just to drop stuff on it and leave it. We'd like to take care of it. So that's our idea behind the project. Like I said, it's not a development. I'm not a developer. We're going to be there 5-10 years down the road. If Rox comes and visits me, I'll still be there. So that's, that's how we intend to use it. I think it'll provide ample tree coverage, and that extra 25 feet, again, it's on my land. I'm not asking for anybody else's land. We have power lines running down the middle. We'll do coverage on one side, the other side, plus a fence. I think we're providing a substantial amount of coverage, more so than, maybe other projects would have required, because we understand the challenges this project has and the challenges this piece of land has. And that's why we're asking for 25 feet as opposed to 50.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, just some discussion, I guess from a site standpoint, but then also, 10 to 15 trucks, big diesel motors, shaking, idling, pulling in. Again, very pro-business, love business expansion. I think from a neighbor standpoint, stakeholder in the community, owned property for 100 years. I think this is the true definition of why we actually need these setbacks and such large setbacks to separate properties like this.
Unfortunately, we buy property, and then what's happened in the past is North Carolina at one time allowed annexation for a town at will, and I got caught up in that, as the staff knows, and so you kind of get stuck. And I wish there's some way around it, but I mean, we'll just have to put the vote up and see which way the board goes.
Mr. Chairman, again, I don't think this property is suitable for what he needs to do on this particular site. So with that in mind, I make a motion it be disapproved.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay. But this, obviously, it won't go to the council, so that's pretty much where it lays right here. Is that correct, Rox?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business at this time?
There is no other business for the tree board.
Okay. All righty. Do I have a motion to close the tree board meeting?
Motion to close the meeting.
I
Do we have
second.
a second?
I second.
All in favor? And